Hey y'all, I'm coming to you in the middle of February with my January wrap-up. I definitely meant to get this up earlier. I filmed it once at the beginning of the month, wasn't super happy with it, and then I got really sick so I didn't have a chance to refilm it. So I'm sorry it's really late, but better late than never. I had a really good reading month in January. I think I read more books this month than the entirety of my high school career, which is really sad to think about considering that it's actually not that many books. But we won't talk about that. BookTube is definitely motivating me to read more, which I'm very happy about. And I think I read my favorite book of all time this month, and I'm excited to talk about that. I also started using Goodreads this year, which is still a work in progress, just because usually when I read books, I'm like, oh, that was a fun story, and I'm not used to, doing it like for reviews, so I'm not used to going, oh, were the characters fleshed out, how was the plot, etc. So we're working on it. I'm just going to go through these books in chronological order, and yeah, if you want to see anything more in depth, Goodreads review, but they're not actually that much more in depth, so I'm not sure if that's helpful at all. So the first two books I read this month were on my Desperate 2019 TBR, so they are the books that I've been meaning to read for years and haven't, so I kicked off two of them at the beginning of the month, which I'm very excited about. I read The Secret Diary of Lizzie Bennet and The Epic Adventures of Lydia Bennet. These are books in relation to the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which is probably my favorite web series, and I was really excited to read them. The Secret Diary of Lizzie Bennet wasn't that great, honestly. I gave it 2 stars just because it didn't give us that much more in-depth of a look at anything that was happening on the LBD, and also it's just not, the story is not suited to a book format as much as it was a vlog format. So seeing that little scope of life was perfect for a 5-minute vlog, but for like a full diary, it didn't feel like enough. You also definitely needed to watch the vlogs for it, and I think even for a book that's in relation to something, you should still be able to read it as a separate book. So it was kind of disappointing. It didn't give you that much more content. It didn't feel as fleshed out as the vlogs. The Epic Adventures of Lydia Bennet, though, I gave 4 stars. It's a story after the LBD, so I think they definitely had to make like a proper storyline for it, versus how the Lizzie Bennet book was during the web series, so they kind of just went in connection to it. I thought it was done really well. I have a bookshelf on Goodreads that's just books I rated too high because I was emotional about them. This is probably under that bookshelf just because objectively it's not that great of a book. But, oh, I just loved watching Lydia heal and grow, and yeah, it's definitely a comfort book for me, and it's objectively not that great, but it was a very sweet story about Lydia, so it got a 4 stars from me. Then I read They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. As you'll see this month, I read Adam Silvera and Becky Albertalli. I'm trying to read a lot of their books before I read, I think, What If It's Us, just because I don't want to, not like one author, but then be turned off from both because of reading their joint book. So I read They Both Die at the End. I think I give it 2 or 3 stars on Goodreads, just because for a lot of the book I felt like they could have gone more in depth with the whole idea of the death cast, which I thought was really cool, and also I didn't really see the chemistry between Mateo and Rufus. Honestly, it was just like, there are 2 boys, now gay. It didn't feel like a relationship was being made. It just felt like, because gay. I'm all for because gay, but I would also like chemistry in my main couple. So that was really disappointing. Also, the ending was emotional, but it wasn't as heart-wrenching as I thought it was going to be, considering that it's a book titled They Both Die at the End. So I don't know. I expected a lot more out of this book than I got. The 4th book I read in January, again, like I've been saying, I've been trying to read Adam Silvera and Becky Albertalli, was Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. I gave it 3 stars. It's a very cutesy, like, fluffy story about a cute couple, so that was nice, but I feel like all the characters were written to be quirky, but they weren't quirky. Like, it would be like, this person is quirky, this is why they're quirky, but it was never, like, shown that they were quirky, which was upsetting because I like quirky characters, and it was just like, this person is all of this. You're not going to find out they're all of this, but I'm telling you right now they're all of this, which was annoying. Also, I couldn't get the characters straight because they weren't fleshed out. So I read this, almost all of it in one sitting, and even then I was confused. I was like, who is who? Who's a sister? Who's a friend? I couldn't keep track of that because the characters weren't fleshed out enough for me to remember enough about them to know who they were. So it was a cutesy story. It just wasn't as expansive as I wanted it to be. The 5th book I read this month caused a bit of an identity crisis. Since I was like 10, I think I've been saying The Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favorite books, and it's been like the book that I've been like, this got me into reading. And so that has always been like, you know, top of the list, favorite book of all time. And then along with that, for the past couple of years, it's been a John Green book. So it was at first Looking for Alaska until Turtles All the Way Down came out, and then it was Turtles All the Way Down. So those have been like favorite books of all time, up there. And then I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and then I was like, oh shit, this might be a favorite book. And then had an identity crisis over that. And I could talk about this book for forever. I've recommended it to literally everyone. My coworkers, my roommate, my best friend. Literally, I've been telling everyone to read this book. And I think the big thing for this, for me, is, okay, a lot of the times when I read books with bi rep, there is a love interest who is biphobic. And they remain a love interest. And they remain biphobic. Which always confused me and always pissed me off. So when I read Evelyn Hugo, there is a love interest who is somewhat biphobic at the beginning, because I think there's even a quote that Evelyn says, which is something like, I was a straight woman when she, it was like I was a gay woman when she was in love with me, and I was a straight woman when she wasn't, something like that. But like, as the story goes on, you get to watch that character literally, like I think Evelyn calls herself gay or something at one point, or the love interest does that, and then she corrects herself and was like, oh no, but you're not a lesbian, you're bisexual, something like that. And I was just like, oh, I'm fine if you show biphobia, if there's growth. Just, I hate pointless biphobia with no growth, and they remain a love interest, and it just, ugh. So I saw this in this book, and I was super duper excited about it. The 6th book I read was also on my desperate TBR, but more specifically the author. So I've been meaning to read Rainbow Rowell for years, and I said I wanted to do Eleanor and Park or Fangirl first. And I didn't read the comments on my video until after I read this book, where someone was like, hey, don't read Eleanor and Park, it's not that great. And I read it, and I was like, oh no. So this was a 2-star book for me. I just couldn't get behind the main couple. Again, I like to see chemistry, and I didn't see chemistry between this couple until like more than halfway through the book, which was upsetting for me. And the other thing is, they're just both really terrible in this relationship. Like, oh my god, I couldn't even. Like, there was, all of the time during this, it was either they put the other person on a pedestal, or they were just like dirt. And I just, and there was, I can't even with this. And like, Park, I can't even talk about it. Park decides that now that he's in a relationship, he doesn't need friends anymore. And then when, like, I think Eleanor is like, oh, this bad thing is happening to me, and I think it's your ex, he goes, oh, are you sure you didn't do it for attention? And I'm like, bitch, no! Like, ugh. Also, Park, so much of the time, is like, oh, will this make me a little bit gay? And I'm like, boy, again, like, I'm fine if there's growth, but there's no growth. It was just there. It was just there. There was no point to it being there. And I just, ugh. Anyway, I can't even with this book. I didn't think the relationship was that good. I barely saw the chemistry till more than halfway through the book, which is not good. And there was just so many aspects of it where I was like, can you not? Like, ugh. I did really like getting to see the family aspects in the book. I feel like a lot of books kind of ignore family aspects when they're talking about a main couple, which I really liked. And I also really liked the ending. I know a lot of people don't like the ending. I actually enjoyed the ending. But this was not a good book for me. 7th book I read was History Is All You Left Me by Silvera. This, after reading They Both Die at the End, I wasn't super ecstatic to read another Silvera book, but I saw it at the library and I was like, hey, why not? I think I gave this 4 stars. I didn't actually read this with, like, reviewing in mind, so my rating is honestly purely on my enjoyment of the book. I gave it 4 stars. I thought the story was cool. I liked the characters. I kind of find the storyline mind-boggling. There are so many things that I'm like, that was a decision the characters are making? Cool. Okay. Anyway, I really enjoyed the story, but this is another book where it was like, I got halfway through until I started being like, oh, I'm getting invested in the story now. Which, I cannot DNF a book. It just never happens. I have to finish reading it. So I didn't really get into it until about halfway through, which I think is not a great testament to how the book is going. But I did enjoy the story. There's a quote, though, that I have to read to you that was in the book, and I was like, okay? Hang on, hold up, let me find this quote. I was reading this book in bed, and I read this, and I started cackling. I shit you not. I started cackling, and my roommate was like, are you okay? Okay, are you ready for this? I hug him like the brother I never had. Like the brother I would have never slept with if I'd known I'd one day be calling him a brother of mine. Finally, I read King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. I've made way too many videos on this book already. I really enjoyed the story. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. I think the main driving force of this book was really getting to see Nikolai and Zoya and Nina again. But there's still like plot points I'm iffy on. I'm really iffy on the love interests. And I don't think it was as action-packed or character-driven as Six of Crows, which I think we were all hoping for the Globe to continue. For me, that wasn't the case. There is still solid characterization, there's still growth, you know, all that stuff. There's some great emotional moments and quotes and stuff, but it just overall for me wasn't as compelling as Six of Crows. But still, solid plot, solid storyline, and if you want some great quotes, people shitting on Alina, it's there too. So those are all the books I read in January. It was a great reading month for me, and I'm hoping that continues into February, even though we're already halfway through. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you sometime. Goodbye.